and we start singing them, and the words and the reality just come together in a way that when you stop and think that we're singing, "Behold our God seated on his throne," and he is. And he's sitting in heaven listening to people in Maple Shade, New Jersey, all around the world, but us too, listening to us sing his praise. And there's nothing imaginary about it. Wow. I invite you to open up in the Old Testament today to the book of Habakkuk. We are going to be having on Saturday, November the 15th, an Old Testament walk through the Bible. And it's been great to see how many of you have signed up. And if you haven't, we'd love to have you join us. It's going to be a great day learning, putting together the Old Testament in a very creative way that helps even people like me remember it and kind of walk through it. And if you remember a couple weeks ago, we showed the video, and they say, what is a Habakkuk, right? In the video, because there are parts of this Old Testament that obviously we're not in a whole lot. We will be. Habakkuk is in the Old Testament. If you're better off, I guess, starting from the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and head back, because it's closer to the end of the Old Testament. About 1970, my parents abandoned their 6 children for the very first time. And I joke about that with them, while I recognize that, some of you perhaps, that's no joke, the pain you literally went through as a child. But I grew up in a wonderful home, wonderful care, and because of how wonderful and secure and safe, I developed a tremendous bond to my parents and to my mommy, right? And my parents went away in 1970. It was the first time they had ever left us. I think, roughly, right? The first time they ever left us for a weekend. And I was 9 years old. So Danny was 10, Kathy was 11, Leah was 12, something like that. And Tommy was younger than me, Teresa was younger. But they left us in the care of a dear woman named Mrs. McGlone from Maple Shade. Maybe if you're from town, you knew her. Precious, dear, loving woman. And all I remember is myself. I don't have, spot-on memory of the weekend. All my memories are this. I want my mom. I want my mom. And I can remember just seeing Mrs. I want my mom. And I remember her saying, come on, your younger brother and your little sister, they're not crying. Why? I want my mom. And on Saturday, I do remember she took us to the old, it's still there, Morristown Mall. Those of you who remember it back with the little stream and ducks and all going. Anyhow, it's a Morristown Mall. And I remember we were standing outside of the Woolworths, and she gave me a soft pretzel. And she handed it to me, and I said, I want my mom. Honest. I just cried and cried. That poor woman was doing everything she could do to get my mind off of my mom. She was doing positive things. I remember her trying some negative reinforcement. What's your little sister going to think about you? All that. And I just remember, and when I think she broke there at the mall eventually, Mrs. McGlone, because I want my mom, and she just, I've had it with you. Knock it off. And of course, that shook me. No, I just went, I want my mom. The point I'm making is there was nothing Mrs. McGlone could do. There was nothing she was going to be able to do short of getting my mom to come home and me seeing my mom. Now, while crying all weekend as a 9-year-old, because my parents were away, is obviously not model behavior or anything I'll put on my resume, right? At the same time, I look back at it and I think of it, and I ask myself today, do I have that same desperate need to talk to God every day? Are there days that I can get by making my way through it and kind of counting on my own thoughts, Are there days where I'm satisfied with just sharing my burdens and issues with other people and I feel, okay, I was heard? Are there days where I'm okay just getting advice from somebody close to me? Or do I have a passionate, desperate need daily and throughout the day to talk to God? We're going to begin a study today in the book of Habakkuk. It's an Old Testament prophet, and what it is, it's a desperate conversation with God. And so let's begin by talking to God. Almighty God, we have already spoken to you today in song and in prayer. And we do come before you now. I confess to you, O God, that my thoughts of you are often too small. My thoughts of things around me are often too big. My thoughts of news stories are often too big. My thoughts of other people's opinions are often too big. I confess to you that I don't see you seated on the throne as often as I need to. And so I ask you, oh God, to speak to us today. We live here. We live in Maple Shade and in Morristown and in Pensacola and in Cherry Hill. And we live in Marlton and Mount Laurel and these surrounding areas. We live different lives. We go to work and we're at home and we're paying bills. We need to see the living God. So speak to us today, we pray. We ask you in the name of Jesus. Amen. James Montgomery Boyce, who pastored 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia for many years, he's with the Lord now. He says this about the book of Habakkuk: for a book written in Judah more than 2,500 years ago, it deals with surprising modern problems. Let's read the beginning of Habakkuk. Verse 1, we read, the oracle which Habakkuk the prophet saw. How long, O Lord, will I call for help, and you will not hear? I cry out to you violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity and cause me to look on wickedness? Yes, destruction and violence are before me. Strife exists and contention arises. Therefore the law is ignored and justice is never upheld. For the wicked surround the righteous. Therefore justice comes out perverted. First thing we want to see this morning, we're going to look at four major points. The first is this: real life. Real life. We read the oracle which Habakkuk the prophet saw. We don't read anything else about Habakkuk anywhere in the Old Testament. So I'm going to try and study more background. All we're going to get about him will come from what he reveals to us in this book. And there are several facts that come out pretty clear and give us a pretty good idea of where he is and what's happening. Habakkuk is writing from Judah. Now, where is Judah and how did he get there? Well, let's kind of just rewind and give ourselves a good context. Back in the book of Genesis, God said to Abraham, I want to take you from where you live and I want to make you an entirely new nation, the nation of Israel, that I'm going to use to display my relationship as your God with to the world, to you and to the world. And so God took Abraham and he made them the nation of Israel. And the nation of Israel began to grow. And through Joseph, they ended up in Egypt with provisions because of how God raised Joseph up in Egypt. And so they're in Egypt, but while they're in Egypt for all those years and they're growing, eventually the opinion turns against them and now they're in bondage and slavery. God brings them out of that through the Exodus. He takes them into the promised land and they conquer and the kingdom grows, and in its most powerful time, the kingdoms under King David, and then Solomon after him. And Solomon dies and the kingdom is divided. And there's a north kingdom and there's a southern kingdom. And if you looked at modern Israel today, the kingdom's kind of divided roughly just a little bit north of Jerusalem. So you look at modern Israel today, and you kind of just a bit north of Jerusalem and go down to the Dead Sea and toward Egypt. That's the southern kingdom. That's Judah. And just north of Jerusalem and up toward the Sea of Galilee in that area, that's the northern kingdom. That was Israel. And by the time that Habakkuk is writing, it's probably around, just roughly around 600 BC. The northern kingdom has already fallen to the Assyrian Empire. Judah, the southern kingdom, has gone through tremendous religious revival through King Josiah. They reinstituted Passover, but Josiah dies, and amazingly, it's all downhill. And Judah is in a time of terrible spiritual and moral decay. Why is it good for us to know where this happened and when, roughly geography, history? Why? Because it reminds us Habakkuk is a real person, right? Habakkuk does not find some magic beans and climb a beanstalk into the clouds. He doesn't get bit by a spider and swing through the streets, shooting, right? Webs. No, he has his feet in the ground, in the same dirt we do. Yeah, theirs is eastern dirt and ours is western dirt, but it's the same earth. And he has no superpowers, no magical solutions. It's Habakkuk. Real life. And with every real life comes the second thing we see. Pain. Real life hurts. It hurts. This week, Dylan got stitches in his chin. The Schroll's van broke down. Real life hurts. Whatever your pain was this week. Real life can feel so unfair. And that unfair part we're going to deal with as we move further along in Habakkuk. When my daughter Natalie was home, I was asking her, how did homecoming go at Grove City College that she's at? And she says, oh, Dad, it was great, a lot of fun and all. But she says, they had the different, fraternities, sororities, they built floats. And she said most of all the other floats had gone through. And we had spent hours, pumping something with these tissue flowers or whatever it is, Hi, Mary. I'm sorry. I just saw Mary. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just look at him thinking, it's Mary. Anyhow, so Mary, I'll talk to you later. But anyhow, so all this tissue, and she said all the other floats had kind of, most of them at least, had gone, paraded down and past the judge's stand. And it was our turn, and just as we were coming, it started raining. And the rain ruined all the tissue flowers. And you know what? Sometimes in life, rain ruins your float and not theirs. Sometimes the football bounces away from you right into their arms. Sometimes the music stops and you're in between chairs and you're the only one who doesn't get a chair. And those are just the annoying things. Because we know it gets a lot worse, right? Sometimes you get rejected for someone else. Sometimes you lose your job the same day your friend got a new job. Some days you get the answer from the doctor that it's cancer, and they get the answer that the results were negative and they're fine. Some days your loved ones die, and their loved ones survive. And it hurts. And Habakkuk cries out with that hurt, right? How long, O Lord, will I call for help, and you will not hear? I cry out to you, violence, yet you do not save. Why do you make me see iniquity? And you look at some of these words he references in verse 2. Violence. Verse 3. Iniquity. Wickedness. Destruction. Strife. Contention. These are painful words, and you see Habakkuk saying, there's no justice. And we often, in our and I'm not making fun of any rallies, but we often will say, no justice, no peace. In other words, we're not going to tolerate no justice in a democracy. It's okay to stand up for justice. But as we're going to see, sometimes we try and do that with God. You don't give me justice, and we're not going to have any peace. It doesn't work, right? Because we're basing it on our sight lines. Habakkuk hurts. He's in pain. He's listing these words, and they're tough. They hurt. And there's random pain, and there's personal pain, right? What do I mean by that? For example, I'll take one night this week when I was watching the news, right? There's the random pain as we're watching the news and we hear about this doctor with Doctors Without Borders who is in New York City and he has tested positive for Ebola, right? It's random. What I mean is he was there with a group of other doctors and somehow he was one of the ones who got it. He's experiencing the pain of having it. And let's face it, a lot of Americans experience the pain with him. And they're watching the news and it's in New York City. And they start experiencing pain as well, right? What about this? What if that? What if this? What if that? And forget it, we're not going to go see that Broadway show because, and that pain of what if? And what is it? It's random pain. What I mean is, nobody is sitting there thinking, what if somebody comes and pours some Ebola in my glass of milk at my house? It's random. It's out there for all of us to be affected by. Yet there was another story that night about some police officers who were doing their job, and meanwhile, a militant Islamic individual with terror in his mind stood in hiding with an axe and attacked them specifically because they were police officers and started hacking at them, right? That's personal pain. See, there's random pain, there's personal pain. There's one sort of pain when you hear your window break and it's a baseball that accidentally has crashed through your window. There's another sort of pain when you hear your window break and it's a rock and you hear car wheels squealing as they take off. One is random. The baseball. The other is somebody threw a rock through my window. Habakkuk is experiencing pain because real life hurts. And we see his agony. He's crying out. You read it in his voice. One writer says Habakkuk is not a saint made of plaster. He is just as frightened as the next person. Habakkuk is feeling this. He's looking at it. It hurts. It's scary. And a lot of it, he's saying it's intentional. There's no justice. And pain hurts. And the only thing that makes pain worse is when it doesn't go away, right? And that's what he's going through. Look at verse 2. How long? How long, O Lord? How long? Perhaps you're here today and you're in anguish. You may be here today and saying, you know what, I'm kind of riding a high. I guess this sermon doesn't really relate to me. I think it relates to all of us because you're not going to ride that high forever, right? But some of you may be here in anguish. I'm literally thinking of giving up because the pain hurts and it won't go away. And I'm saying, how long, oh God? How long? When is the turn going to come? How long? And Habakkuk, in his pain, says this: I have to talk to God. I want my God. I want my God. And we see the third thing, that real life hurts, but real conversations, the real conversation that heals. The real conversation that heals. For what do we read there in verse 2? We read Habakkuk saying, how long, O Lord, O Lord. And those words, O Lord, are the beginning of the most necessary conversation Habakkuk could possibly have. Habakkuk is a unique prophetic book. If you read the prophetic books, you're going to hear a lot the Lord saying, tell my people this, tell my people that, tell my people this. We don't see God anywhere in Habakkuk saying, tell my people this. No, Habakkuk is a conversation. It's a conversation. It's a personal conversation. Look at verse 2, right? He says, I cry out to you. This is a personal conversation that we get to hear. And it's not because somebody leaked, Habakkuk, they found his diary and they leaked it. No, we're supposed to hear it. Some of you lived this story with me. Others of you have probably heard me share it. But it fits to me so real. So when I was in 10th grade, in our youth group, and I had a girlfriend, and this was one of those times. I did a lot of immature things, but this was one of those times where my heart was right. She was not I could sense this girl really had no interest in the Lord at the time, and I was kind of like, Lord, I realize I should tell her, we kind of need to break up, you know what I mean? Because my motives were right. And I'm talking after youth group. My one buddy walks with me, and we're standing there in front of kind of what was the missionary house now, and I said to him, I saw her coming. I said, you better get lost, because she told me she wants to talk with me outside here at this spot, and so she's coming. And he says to me, I'm going to climb the tree. And I said, no. And he climbed the tree. And so as I began to talk with her and I'm sharing with her, I don't think that, this is the Lord's will. And she got very upset and was crying a bit. And as she was, and I'm trying to say things, he starts making noises in the tree and laughing, and she looks up and, is that you, so-and-so? And she says, you two are so immature. And she took the clogs that she had in her hand and across my side of my head and kind of gave my ears a nice ring, and off she went. And I remember sitting there thinking, this wasn't even my fault, right? I understand why she was upset, because it certainly appeared that this was two immature guys having a laugh at her expense. It really wasn't my design, right? But for her, it was a sense of what? This was a private conversation that he had no part in listening to. We get to heaven, Habakkuk's going to say, how did you all find out about that? No. God wanted us to see this. This is not a leaked letter. This is Habakkuk's oracle, his vision of his own conversation with God, and God has it for us too. He wants us to hear the conversation because we need it. Because what Habakkuk is going to find out is that his peace, his healing is not going to come based on how God answers. It's going to come based on the fact that he gets to talk to God. See that? It's the peace he finds, the healing that is going to be his, is not because God says, all right, in 2 weeks you're going to be happy, and then another third week you're going to get this. No, it's in that he gets to talk to God. Being able to talk to God. Because that's what Satan doesn't want you to do. And he wants you to stop. And so he wants to say to you, why are you talking to him? Isn't he supposed to be in control of things? Isn't he the one to let this happen to you? Why are you talking to him? Haven't you been asking him about this for months? He hasn't done what you wanted him to do. Why are you still talking to him? Why are you talking to a God who isn't doing what you want him to do? Satan wants to get you to stop talking to God. And Habakkuk knows, I have to talk to him. He is my only hope. He is my only healing. He is on a different level than everybody else I know. We sang the chorus, oh, how he loves you and me. We weren't singing, oh, isn't it nice to be loved by somebody? We weren't singing, boy, it's great to have someone else on my support team. No, we were singing, oh, what it means that the God above all things loves me. Behold, what manner of love people have for us. No. What manner of love the Father has given to us. See, he's desperate. I'm in pain. I have to talk to God. If you hold your place in Habakkuk, you're going to see the same thing with David. Just turn back to Psalm 13. Psalm 13. We see what Habakkuk says. Look what David says in Psalm 13. The 13th Psalm for the choir director. It's from Dave to Dave. From David the King to David Fox, right? Sing this, whatever. Psalm 13. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? Man, there's a guy that doesn't know anything about walking with God, right? Except this is the same David who writes in the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. You see, when God is providing that peace and care, praise him. When you're aching and you're crying out, keep talking to him. Lord, I'm the same God who knows that you're my shepherd. I know that you make me lie down in the pastures. Oh God, I'm in so much pain right now. Why aren't you hearing me? David and Habakkuk do the same thing. They cry out together, oh God, why? And we're going to talk in the weeks to come how we handle that issue. But today I just want to deal with that aspect. They do the right thing. David, Habakkuk, they do the right thing. They say, I have to talk to God. Why? Because the fourth and last thing we see, it's real life. It's real life hurts. The real conversation heals, and they know that the real God hears. He hears. Oh Lord, even as he calls out to him, Habakkuk his questions are displaying, I know that you have the power. We Americans, and I'm speaking for all of us. Maybe you may not feel like that's fair. But we're consumers. And we know, and we have to understand, that affects us. It affects our mentality, right? You live in a certain part of the world, you are bending down and drinking water that we would say, oh, I'm not drinking that. Matter of fact, this bottled water, I don't like this bottled water. It doesn't taste nearly as good as this bottled water over here. We're consumers. And we are affected that way. And it's who we are. It's where we live. So it's not just how we shop. It's if I don't like the way that coach is treating my child, I'll pull my child off the team. I don't like the way that restaurant makes lasagna, I'll get it over here. I don't like the way that politician is governing, I will try to get him or her replaced. And that's the world we live in. The problem is that even as Christians, we let that warp our relationship with a God who is above all of that. And somehow we're going to get him, we're going to mold him into our expectations. I want to tell you something. You can't opt out of God's world. You can't. You can ignore him. You can say, I'm going to reject you, but you cannot get out of his world. Face it, you can't. There is no other world for you to go shop in. You can't. Listen, you can't get him replaced. He'll never be replaced. The point I'm making is this. He is God. We desperately need him. It's not the other way around. We desperately need him. Whether you believe that or not doesn't change the truth of that statement in any way, shape, or form. We desperately need him. And that's what Habakkuk knows. It's one of the things that one of the contemporary prophets of Habakkuk's time, if you would, just turn in closing to Jeremiah. Go left. Go back toward Genesis. And you'll find Jeremiah. Jeremiah did a lot of crying. A lot of crying. And yet what does Jeremiah chapter 10 tell us? Tells us this in Jeremiah chapter 10 as the word is being proclaimed. Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 6. There is none like you, O Lord. There is none like you, O Lord. You are great, and great is your name in might. Who would not fear you, O King of the nations? Indeed, it is your due. For among all the wise men of the nations and in all their kingdoms, there is none like you. He may not be doing what you want him to do right now, friend. But know this. Your most desperate need is not for him to do what you want him to do. It's for you to talk to him. It's you need him. There is no other place to turn where you're going to find any real lasting answers. He is God alone. You are God alone. Since before time began, you are God alone. This week I was thinking about that verse and I thought, Lord, I'm just going to go take a walk and be with you. And I left my cell phone behind for that reason, and I walked around the neighborhood, and I ended up at Steinhauer Park, and it was a beautiful morning. It was a little later in the morning, so the sun was up some, and where I was sitting, just at our own little Steinhauer Pond here in Maple Shade, the sky was brilliant blue. The sun was shining through some little colored leaves, and it was on the pond, and as the pond was rippling, and absolutely gorgeous. And of course, as I'm looking at it, I did what? I reached for my phone to take a picture. Right? And I did. Just instinct. Oh. And wasn't there. And I'm glad it wasn't there. Because as I reached for it, it was as if God was saying to me, Vincent, this is for you. You need a bigger view of me. You need to see me bigger and bigger and bigger, because the bigger God is, the more desperate we will run to Him. The more desperate we'll run to Him. I grew up enjoying music, different kinds. And in my era growing up, my favorite Bee Gees song was that. Run to me, right? Run to me whenever you're lonely. Run to me when you need a shoulder. Now and then you need someone older. So, darling, you run to me, right? That song guy kind of saying, look, I'm older and you need me, and so run to me. Listen to the sound of music. You are 16 going on 17. You need someone older and wiser telling you what to do. I am 17 going on 18. I will take care of you, right? These songs of trying to convince them, listen, you need me, come to me, run to me, I'm older. And I read, from everlasting to everlasting, thou art God. I must tell Jesus. I must tell Jesus. I cannot bear these burdens alone. I must tell Jesus. I must tell Jesus. Jesus can help me. Jesus alone. Oh Lord, as we prepare to sing those words, I ask you to tear open our hearts at this moment, wherever we are, wherever we've been going in life, stop us in our tracks. Make us desperate. Desperate to talk to you. Desperate to cry to you. We need you.